I've often thought, but I feel sometimes I've only had one idea. It's the same idea. The QI is actually the same idea as the news quiz, because what it is you take a lot of dull stuff and you make it very interesting and funny. There's no difference really, except the news quiz is narrower in its canvas because it's just taking the events of the week, whereas QI takes the whole universe. But in essence, the format is the same.
We present the news quiz, and here's the chairman, Barry Norman.
Radio was a bit of a backwater, really, in the mid-70s, the early 70s anyway. And there were a lot of shows that were really a little bit tired and a little bit old-fashioned and sentimental. And because radio had been huge in the 60s, and these producers that I mentioned, Alistair Scott Johnston, they all had 3 names like that, and they talked like that. We stopped the mighty roar of London's traffic for In Town Tonight, produced by Alistair Scott Johnston. That's what it was like. And so when a bunch of us started coming in under David Hatch, he started recruiting some much younger people. And overnight, the department turned around to be the coolest, the sexiest place in the whole BBC. It was really hot. I got a bit of a reputation for being Mr. Topical Comedy, and Nicholas Parsons came to see me and he said, I've got a great idea for a new show. It's a quiz about the news. And I said, well, that is a good idea. Because I was his producer on Just a Minute. Again, I was the 3rd producer of Just a Minute, so I knew him very well. And he said, I'm a friend of Giles Brandreth, and he could be a team captain, he'd be very good. And I've got these 2 rather bright school teachers from, I think it was UCS in Hampstead, who write all the questions, and we've even got a title, he said. It's called Keep Taking the Tabloids. So we made this pilot, and some pilots work, some don't. And this one really didn't work at all. It just didn't. The title was the best thing about it, really.
Well, thank you, and welcome to the news quiz, or if you prefer, Keep Taking the Tabloids. What it amounts to is this: I shall be asking questions about people, events and places in the news this week, and the panel will provide the answers. At least I hope they'll provide the answers, because if they don't, we're in for a very short programme.
I sat down and thought about, okay, so for a start, the news is a serious thing. It shouldn't have a jokey title. So the news quiz, that says exactly what it is. And the other rule was that everybody on it in my day had to be a journalist of some sort. So the original panel were Barry Norman as a sort of film journo in the chair, and then Alan Coren from Punch, Richard Ingrams from Private Eye, Clive James, wonderful writer and journalist himself. And then the 4th spot was always loose, so it could be, I remember once we had Tom Petrie, who was the picture editor of The Sun.
Why would it have been somewhat pointless to write to people who live in Enfield last week?
I think the last literate man in Enfield died.
It was a regular feature in the first series or so that Richard Ingrams had never read the papers at all. He had no idea what was going on. Alan, on the other hand, Alan Coren, had memorised everything and knew everything about everything. And Clive James was in the middle, so just being amusing,
Richard Ingrams, who doesn't know what this is?
I don't.
Right from the first 6 shows, it was getting enormous figures. It was getting 1 million people, which, radio was pretty much of a backwater then, so 1 million people was a lot of people. And it was a very, very exciting show to do because we would record it. I'd get up incredibly early in the morning, like 5, go and get the papers from around the corner of my flat, and cut out bits, all the best cuttings, and then write the script in the morning. I'm literally in the morning from the hottest news, record at lunchtime with a studio audience down in Lower Regent Street at the Paris, edit all afternoon, and it would go out at 6:30 at night.
You can get given an honorary degree, can't you?
I've got
on the
loads
basis
of
of
those.
nothing.
I've
Exactly.
got
It just
lots of
means
those.
nothing. So why
What
not?
do you mean?
just say- Well, you're probably a rector of somewhere. You don't know what a rector is, do you? Just say, who's a bit famous off the telly, who's bored enough to be a rector of our university? Sandy Toksvig, let's get her. And you go along. And you say, oh, yes, I'm the rector. What are my special powers? Do I get to carry a firearm? No, I'm sorry, it's purely nominal. And but you know...
I'll have you know I'm the Chancellor of Portsmouth University.
What does Chancellor mean? Chancellor means you run it in German.
I do.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I get people to call me Angela. It's my first rule.
Angular is not a word I would use to describe myself.
I think the news quiz is as good as it gets at the moment. Sandy's my favourite of all the presenters of the news quiz. I'm sneakingly fond of Barry Norman because we started it together, but Sandy is absolutely on top of her game. You know, it's not the show that I devised where it was very much cryptic questions that you had to work out what the question was about, and I spent a lot of time trying to conceal what the question was about. Now it's obvious, isn't it? You know, who this week has fallen down the rung a bit? And you know who it's referring to, and I imagine that, you know, your Andy Hamiltons or your Jeremy Hardys or whoever it might be, read all the papers and think, oh, I'll take this sort of line on it. And then on top, you get the wonderful banter and the conversation.
Taking part in the news quiz were Alan Coren, Russell Davis, Nigel Dempster and Richard Ingrams. The chairman was Barry Norman and the programme was devised and produced by John Lloyd and Danny Greenstone.